Hey, welcome to Questions Just Asked. Here we're answering your questions that you asked me. I'll remind you if you have a question you'd like to ask, could be about life, theology, could be about the mixed two, could be about culture, could be about the Bible, could be about church. Just ask. John at hopelowcountry.org. Send it to me and I'll be glad to answer it. Hey, we have a good question today. Here's the question. What about the claim that there is more historical evidence of foreign gods than of the Christian God? Now, that's a good question. What I mean foreign God is anything that's not Christian. I think I've answered this question in part before in a couple of the series of answers of a few months back, but let me get specific about this. Let me just point out this. There's always been an attack against Jesus, the Christian God, from the beginning. Take out Jesus and Christianity falls apart. Not only that, but other religious gods have the same problem. There is a faith issue on every one of them. You know, I was talking to a Jewish believer the other day. He said, you know what? There was problems with the Jews' faith all the way back with the Pharisees and Sadducees. He said Pharisees believed in a resurrection. Sadducees did not. And, you know, you get into the Muslim faith. There's difference of opinion in that faith. You get into any God faith issue, and they're going to have the same problems that seemingly show up in the Christian faith. Third point I want to make is interesting that nobody tries to disclaim a man named Jesus lived in Israel at the time of Jesus. Nobody. I've read a lot about those who make claims against Jesus. Nobody wants to make a claim that Jesus never even existed, that a man named Jesus never existed. Oh, a man named Jesus existed. The question is he the Son of God? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. The only evidence that stands against all other gods is the resurrection from the dead. No other gods claim to have raised from the dead. Did you know that a lot of the old religions claimed virgin birth? Did you know that? Yep, they sure did. But none claim resurrection from the dead except for one. And his name is Jesus. All other gods die. All other gods disappear. Wow, how can you get any proof of that? And then the fifth point I want to make before I move on is without the resurrection, Jesus is just plain crazy or a pathological liar. He is. He's just like all the others. So basically what I'm saying is there's other gods. They're either liars or they too are crazy themselves. So let's take a minute and talk about the evidence of Jesus as God. James Choi out of Yale University makes 8 great points. The first one is this: Christianity is different. It's not what man does, it's what God does. All other religions are about how man can go up and have a seat before the God. Christianity is the only one where God sends his Son to make it possible for man to have a relationship with him. It's different. The second thing that makes the evidence that Jesus is God is the resurrection was false. It would have died out when the apostles separated from one another and died all around the known world. You know, you can keep a conspiracy together because that's what you got to say. If Jesus was false, it was a conspiracy by the apostles. And I'm going to tell you something. If you read the Bible real close, these guys weren't that swift. Not that, but a conspiracy can only hold together if you keep everybody together. Christianity actually had the apostles all dispersed around the known world. And then they all died for the cause, all separately out around the known world. Remember David Koresh? They all died in the burning building. Remember Jim Jones? They all died at the temple. Why? It's the only way you can keep your conspiracy together, not Christianity. You know why? Because it wasn't a conspiracy. It was the truth. Not only that, but they each died individually, not by one person going around and killing them all. So that's a proof, indeed, that Jesus is God for people to. The conspiracy won't end, and they would die for it. It's reported that 28 people since Jesus have claimed to be the Messiah. Haven't heard of them, have you? Well, not being one claims they have risen from the dead. Jesus did. Faith in him as Messiah has stayed along or strong for some 2,000 years. Oh, there's been plenty of people. Every once in a while in the USA Today, I read the USA Today, you'll get this whole page. Oh, I'm coming as the Messiah. But none of them claim to be risen from the dead. That's the whole key element. That's what makes Jesus so spectacular. That's what makes Easter so much more important, I think, than Christmas. For Jesus is the only one who is God, who is resurrected from the dead, who beat death so that we could beat death. Fourth proof that the evidence that Jesus is God is the disciples didn't go haywire. See, if it's a conspiracy, somebody's going to go haywire. They're all going to go haywire. What are we going to do? We can't handle this. We can't do this. But then when the disciples were a little bit haywire until the resurrection. There's 3 days that Jesus was dead in the tomb. They were a little bit haywire. Jesus shows up and reveals himself to them. You know what? They go crazy. By the way, I want to tell you that Courtney Guthrie teaches on the proofs of the resurrection on August 14th at 9 a.m. I want you to catch that. The fifth proof that Jesus is God is why would the disciples who have no authority or strength, literally of their own, remain united in seeing the risen Jesus? Surely if it was a lie, one of them would have broken. That's the conspiracy. None of them broke ranks. In fact, they all died but John for the cause. And John was exiled on an island with no Ramada Inn, no running water, no bathrooms, in a cave. And he stayed faithful to the word. Why would they remain faithful? Because it's true. Let me ask you a question. If it wasn't true, why did Judas kill himself? Why did Judas kill himself? You ever thought that? Nobody kills themselves for no reason. Judas was part of the inner circle. He breaks. Nobody kills Judas for breaking from the inner circle. But Judas kills himself. Why? Another reason is not a single disciple recanted their story. Did you know that? Peter got hung upside down. Paul probably was beheaded. John, the lore has it that he was boiled in oil and sent into exile. Many were killed by spear, by sword, burned at the stake. No, not a one recanted their story. Not a one said, hey guys, wait a minute, hold on. Before you light that bundle of wood, I think I'm mistaken. Not a one. One of the most committed enemies against Jesus ends up declaring the truth about Jesus. His name is Paul the Apostle. By the way, that was after Jesus ascended into heaven. And he comes down and reveals himself to Paul. Why would Paul, who's murdering Christians, jailing them? And by the way, Paul believed he was doing the right thing. Why? Because that would be blasphemed in those days in their religious circles to claim God. But Paul gets transformed into being the greatest missionary and evangelist known to man. How's that happen? What, he just saw nice people? No, he saw the risen Lord after he had ascended into heaven. So you can see that's just the beginning of the claims, of the evidences amounting of the truth of Jesus. The others can make their claims, but how do they stand against the kingdom of God? How do they stand against these people who held to the resurrected Jesus? You know, I think for me personally, as I grew a little bit older and wanted to know, is this really true? To me, it was how the disciples didn't break ranks, how they all dispersed and held to the same story, and how they all died for the cause. There's no other cause on earth like that, none that we know of. That's the living God. That's because it's true. I don't have to look at the evidence of all the other gods, because you know what? You make all the claims you want. But in my heart, I know what's real. The resurrected Jesus. Why? Because he not only spoke to Paul, he's revealed himself to me, and I hope he's revealed himself to you. It's not about making a good logical choice. It's about the power of the Holy Spirit saying, You have to ask your question, the same question that Jesus asked everywhere he went. He said, do you believe in who I am? Do you believe? Look at the proof. Hey, thanks for joining me this week. Got a great question next week. It's a funny question. It's, what do you think is the coolest story in the Bible? I love that question. I like to talk about that. So we'll see you next week as we tackle that question.